Welcome to Businessline's State of the Economy podcast, where you'll find insight, analysis, and the story behind the numbers.
Welcome to another episode of the Businessline State of Economy podcast. Today, we are delving into the world of deep tech startups. As technology continues to evolve at a rapid pace, deep tech has emerged as a promising area of innovation, with startups creating solutions that are based on cutting-edge research in fields such as artificial intelligence, robotics, and space tech. Joining us today are two distinguished guests. Arun Natarajan, the founder of Venture Intelligence, a private market intelligence company, and Vishesh Rajaram, the managing partner of Speciale Invest, a venture firm focused on deep tech investments. Welcome, Arun and Vishesh. To start off, Arun, please give us an overview of the funding activity in deep tech startups for this year, and can you also compare it to the past 2 years to get a sense of how it has been growing?
Great. Yeah, I just quickly wanted to qualify that when we talk about deep tech in the Indian context, we are really talking about a very narrow slice of what typically, kind of is, considered deep tech in other countries. Typically, these investments are done, which have IP, but these are not typically, lab level research kind of spin-outs that, other markets have seen. Coming to data, in 2023, we've seen about 22 investments worth about $268 million going into deep technology companies, of which, the major segments have been, chatbot, and then drone technologies, computer vision, climate and agri-tech applications of AI and so on. And last but not the least, space tech, including the recent example of a $1.5 million seed round that, Inspect City had received, led by Speciale Invest. So that's, something, it's a sector that has been increasingly getting the attention of investors in the last 3 years. And, and typically investors from enterprise technology focus. So there was a rise of 45 to 50% in this space, between 2019 and 2021. Interestingly, despite the overall funding winters setting in 2022, deep tech funding actually rose by 50% again, at least in value terms, led by unicorn startup Uni4, and then by the number of deals is kind of in flat. So relatively speaking, deep tech is in a good spot, compared to B2C and other segments that have kind of fallen off the radar.
Right. Thanks, Arun. Arun, also to sort of delve a little deeper into this, generative AI has become a trend today. Do you think there is a correlation with how many investors are coming into deep tech today? Or do you see newer investors sort of taking a bet in this sector now because of this trend?
So I would say that, generative is kind of, again, too narrow from the Indian context. We haven't seen too many startups specifically coming up with IP level stuff like OpenAI, ChatGPT kind of thing. But there have been a lot of companies that focus on applications, whether it is in health tech and so on, that have attracted and continue to attract, and increasingly so. So even in the latest month, one of the pockets where actually there is more activity is in AI. And, it's not surprising that, folks like Vishesh will be, seeing more and more such companies. But of the generative AI variety and already funded, we haven't seen. And my understanding, is from the US context, it's really, really very hot, both number of deals as well as valuations. India, we haven't tracked specifically deals going through in this specific segment. I'm sure, Vishesh can talk about it in more depth because he sees companies as who are pitching them, not necessarily closed transactions.
Sure. Coming to you, Vishesh, help us delve deeper more into this, how the investment scenario is in deep tech today, also because you've been focused on this segment. So if you could also compare it from the past years, how has it been growing? How is the investor interest today?
Firstly, thanks for having me on this call and very excited to do this along with Arun. So, 6 years ago, when we started to look at deep tech, it wasn't very clear how the market would evolve, whether India can innovate. What can India innovate in? Can India do better than America? Can India do better than China? I think these are large questions, right? And of course, the biggest question that is being asked is there capital? Is there appetite for such investment? That, of course, was sort of the broad question that was being put at at us, and we would ask ourselves this question every time we do a deal. But then, it's very hard to boil the ocean. It's way simpler to just boil the pot of tea. And that's when we said to ourselves that, hey, let's not go and answer this macro question of whether India deep tech will survive. Let's look at the opportunities in the micro. And we picked three broad thematic pillars, right? One was EV, climate, energy. That was one theme, which was transition from fossil fuel. And of course, the transition from fossil fuel is more obvious now, but 6 years ago, the timing and the market adoption was still in question. But the biggest favor was the fact that technology was reaching a maturity curve. The price of lithium, hence the price of the battery and all, were coming to levels where you could commercially use it. So we then took a broad view saying that, hey, there will be a lot of technologies coming out for fossil fuel transition. That was one part. The second pillar was space tech. We said to ourselves that, with cost of launch coming down and cost of satellites coming down, there's going to be a 2-level explosion in the space market globally. India has a great opportunity to participate in it because of our historical capability, the talent pool, and the ability to execute. And the third piece was around semiconductor and quantum security, to saying that this is another vertical where there will be an explosion and India will possibly have an advantage to build. 6 years ago to now, what has drastically changed is the geopolitical environment. The geopolitical environment has had a 2-level impact on how tech gets built in India. First level impact is there is a reasonable stress on resilience for technology in the country, which is how can we build homegrown technology, specifically semiconductor being a case in point, or the quantum mission being a case in point, or the green hydrogen mission being a case in point. The second level is the fact that India is now globally being accepted as a destination to buy technology from, be it software or hardware. And given everything else that's going on in the neighborhood, India is being now considered as an attractive alternate to buy these technologies, rather a safer and more trusted partner to buy these technologies, which is where something like a quantum security or something in the satellite space or something in the space tech space still makes it very compelling. And the shade and the angle in which you look at it has drastically changed. Most important leading indicator to look at is there enough talent to build such products and technologies in the country? The capital for it is more a lagging indicator in my view, because I come from the view that if there are people building great products and great technologies, capital will find its way there. That's what people like us are supposed to do, right? We're supposed to find great companies and invest in it. And if all of us do a good enough job, capital will find its place. Yes, the process will be long, it will be painful, it may not be very efficient, but it'll take care of itself over time. So I'm fairly bullish on deep tech because not only was it just market-based, there is also a 2-level compelling reason. One being India resilience and 2 being India being a global technology destination. I think these 2 new additions or changes in my mind is what is disrupting deep tech more than ever before in India.
Thanks, Vishesh. Also, talking about space tech, it's been exciting couple of months for India in the space tech sector. How do you see the space growing from here? Because obviously these companies take a while to reach where they can make revenue. How do you see them growing from here?
I think it's still early days. I think it's a very, very positive environment to be in. I think the biggest positive environment is the fact that there is a space policy that is put out and recognized and accepted in the country. And where the country is very vocal to saying that private space participation is an effort to capture a piece of the global market and not necessarily to compete on the inside. What you're seeing today is just the first generation of space tech companies alongside the policy, which is companies building rockets to take satellites to space, or companies building very unique satellites, capture information. I think the level 2 and level 3 of these generations will play themselves out in the next 5 to 10 years. As Arun mentioned, our most recent investment is in a company called InSpaceCity. As the name goes, their view is to build factories in space or have capabilities to do repairs and maintenance of assets in space, right? So that's, of course, very futuristic when compared to what's already going on. But things are moving quite fast, and a lot of these things will evolve as well.
Arun, would you like to add something to this on the space tech bit?
Sure. So clearly, compared to 3 years back, even, such companies have people like Vishesh, willing to take, flyer quite literally. But, what matters is, how some of the follow-on financing folks, come to the table. In other segments, of course, they have found takers at various levels, whether it is just playing vanilla SaaS and so on. Whether, some of those bigger funds will follow on and, all the way to launch and, beyond, is something that, I'll really be keen to be tracking. But, hats off to people like, Speciale and Vishesh for taking that early leap of faith behind these companies.
Sure. Thanks, Arun. Vishesh, also wanted to get your view on language models like ChatGPT. Do you see Indian startups working on any use cases of such models? What is your view of that space?
I think the space is rapidly evolving. It's evolving so fast that I can't claim to have a very strong view. I think the opportunity is clearly in building workflows and applications around it, because the ChatGPT by itself is a very powerful tool. You now need to be smart enough to see where you can make a business use case by using it. We are seeing a handful of companies that are working in that direction. It's still very early. We have not made any investment yet, but are looking actively.
Sure. Thanks, Vishesh. Thanks, Arun, for your valuable insights. That's all for today's edition. Stay tuned for more exciting episodes of State of Economy podcast. Thank you.